That's great. It's just kind of reaction. Yeah, his that basic idea was it's all the same seasons. Probably 10 years ago.
But I'm kind of surprised because there's so much uneven surface I'm over there. That'll really bother yeah.
There's some evidence.
Yeah.
Other folks think they're not hearing a response. They're always
I like a pint of
they're not hearing any others.
If I'm gonna have a second one, I won't.
Oh, yeah.
Really.
I really come on here.
But it's not.
Yeah.
Well,
Hi. Yeah. I know.
And yes, also on the board.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the DNR, from the Eagles nest.
Nice.
all right, it's a little bit after 1, so why don't we get going? I think everybody is familiar with the format for the afternoon. We shared some emails, and hopefully everybody, especially the panelists, have had a chance to look at the specific questions that are going to drive the discussion this afternoon. But before we get going, just a few logistics. This is a hybrid meeting, and maybe just to check in, Dave or AJ, can you guys hear us? Thumbs up. Or...
Yep.
Okay. One thing with this, we tried to set the room up so it was amenable to both panelists being on camera and the meeting room being visible to the folks who are virtual. There are, as you see, a number of folks virtual. Tina Brown has another meeting that is going to be joining in shortly. Everybody in the room, when you speak, try to speak to that little camera there. That's where the microphone is, and we tend to have some problems if folks are talking to a wall or something. Bathrooms down the hall. There's some snacks and coffee for those of you who are pulling double duty like me, working and making maple syrup nice. The coffee is your friend. So yeah, again, everybody's familiar with the format for our panel discussion. We'll do some quick introductions in a moment, but I thought I'd give some background about why we're here. Talk with some individuals about this, but I came on board last summer as executive director here, and one of the things that had begun here in sort of a fits and starts and stops and type process was development of a forest management plan. You've all been out on the reserve. We got a lot of trees out there. We got in the neighborhood of 5,000 acres of timber under one ownership, which for southern Wisconsin is significant. So there's a chance to do some good things here, ecologically, recreationally, aesthetically, etc. But in a previous life, I worked pretty extensively with foresters and private landowners, trying to make decisions about how to manage those private land forest holdings. And what I quickly came to realize, and panelists nod if you agree with this, everybody has a different opinion about what they want their forest to look like, right? To some, the chainsaw is their friend. To some, a chainsaw is their enemy. To some, the aesthetic appeal to the look of their woods is more important than the ecological biodiversity, things like that. So when you think about developing a forest management plan, which ultimately is going to sit on a table in front of our board members, the vote thumbs up, thumbs down, etc. There are a lot of different attributes, a lot of different values, benefits of forested acreage to take into account. And balancing those different benefits, challenges, opportunities, attributes, etc., can be challenging. So when asked or talking with staff about picking up our forest management planning process, I thought, let's make sure our board members at least have a common base of understanding about what forest management is, what the opportunities are, what the values associated with that 5,000 acres are, what the challenges are, etc. Not that there still won't be discussion and differences of opinion, but at least then the planning group can deliver a plan that recognizes what some of the board interests and desires are. Okay, so maybe facilitate the process. So along those lines, with my background, I went to the board. They may have slept through it. They may not remember this at all, but I went through a little PowerPoint presentation that I shared by email. Basically, the underpinnings of forest ecology and management, succession, things like that. And wisely, they immediately told me at the end of that presentation, yeah, that's you, but we need to hear from some people that really know what they're talking about. So could we have some follow-up discussions regarding forest ecology management? And actually talk to a forester. So the email went out to our 4 panelists who all graciously agreed to contribute their insight and understanding. We drafted with some input a set of questions that they'll each briefly respond to once we get rolling. But I think there will be plenty of time, both for the folks in the room, board members and others online, to ask any follow-up or additional questions that may come to mind. All sort of geared in the end to give everybody on the board and others, again, a common base of understanding about what forest management is. You know, how do we, if we want to keep oak on the landscape, what things do we need to consider? What is it about oak as a group that they require in terms of site conditions, disturbance? What is the shelter with harvest? Is clear cutting evil, or does it provide opportunities to maintain some communities on the landscape? Things like that. Again, common understanding. Let's do some quick introductions. No need for a full-blown biography or life story, but I'm Scott Walter, Executive Director here at Kickapoo Valley Reserve. I'll hand it over on this side.
Dan Wilson, a wildlife biologist with the DNR in Vernon and Crawford counties.
I'm Julie Bull. I serve on the management board.
Scott Lynch of the board.
Dick Wallen, serve on management board.
Hi, Ben Johnston, Program Associate.
Jackie Yoko, KVR staff.
Brandon Bleur, Forestry and Wildlife Division Manager for Ho-Chunk Nation.
Christine Walroth, DNR Forester, and Walroth Field Office, cover Vernon and Crawford counties.
Armund, Bartz, Ecologist, Wisconsin DNR across.
I'm Greg Edge, Wisconsin DNR Division of Forestry. I'm one of our state forest ecologists, silviculturist, so I work statewide, but I am located out of La Crosse.
I'm Summer Lewis, staff person.
I'm Jason Lease, the property manager here in Lisa.
And my name is Erica Cronk, and I work at KVR.
That's everybody in the room, and real quick, 3 people online. David?
Hi, everybody. Dave Maxwell. I'm at work right now, Vernon Electric Co-op. I'm on the Kickapoo Valley Reserve Board. I'm the tourism representative, and I'm outside the Kickapoo watershed. And I live in Westby. And sorry I couldn't be there today, but I'm glad I have this opportunity to be with you online.
Glad you're here, Dave, and I see Mike.
Yeah, good afternoon, Scott and everyone. Mike Finley here with Division of Forestry DNR based out of Richland Center.
And AJ.
AJ Man, Ho-Chunk Nation DNR, I sit on the board.
Thanks, AJ. And again, we might see, hopefully we'll see a couple other folks, board members pop in who couldn't join us right at one, but plan to attend. So let's jump right in. Everybody excited? If not, we have coffee again. So the way this will play out, just to review, we drafted 6 sort of very general questions related to forest ecology, management, opportunities, challenges, that each of the panelists, will just start with Greg with each question, move on down the line, will respond to. They've seen these questions before, hopefully. A short couple-minute, 5-minute summary of their thoughts related to the question. And once we're through, we'll open it up to any follow-up questions, thoughts from the board members. So since I'm standing up here, I'll just make a habit of reading these questions. And question number 1, Greg, I feel like Alex Theater sat up there. In light of the KRMB mission to preserve and enhance KVR's unique environmental, scenic, and cultural features, what opportunities do you feel are important for the board and KVR staff to consider as we engage in the development of our forest management plan? Are there issues that you feel are of lower importance in terms of investing staff time and resources?
Well, I thought this was kind of maybe the key question, because there's a ton of opportunities on the KVR. I've been around in this area working since 1998. I used to be a forester in La Crosse and the area forestry leader. I worked in Vernon County quite a bit and recreate on the KVR, so I'm really excited that you guys are looking at developing a forestry plan. We had worked for quite a while to get an inventory together, and now you have a great inventory that's in our computer system, Whisper. So hopefully I won't take too many of my minutes, Scott, but this is the question I had 12 items for, because as I said, lots of opportunities. I think given your mission, I would say restoration is a big opportunity on this property. And by that, what I mean is the reintroduction of natural disturbance patterns, things like fire, grazing, wind, and silvicultural practices that are meant to mimic those things to restore and maintain natural communities that are here on the property, but may have been degraded because of past land use practices or just changes in the way disturbances like fire happen. So I think there's a real opportunity to reintroduce those things to try to get the species composition of your forest, the structure of them, and then also just the natural processes that go with those. I spent a little time digging into your recon data, and so an opportunity are some of your major forest types. You have 1,300 acres of oak, 1,000 acres of white pine, some of that's plantation, some of it's natural, 900 acres of northern hardwood, 600 acres of central hardwood, and 500 acres of miscellaneous deciduous, which could be a lot of different things. But those are like some of the major types which present some major opportunities. And Scott, you've already mentioned it. The biggest one is oak. I looked at the age distribution, so the age of your oak forests on this property. The vast majority of them are between about 70 years and about 120 years, maybe 130, which is very typical for the whole state of Wisconsin. We have this big bubble of oak in that age bracket. But I found one stand that's less than 30 years old. So what that means is oak is not replacing itself on the property. And this is not unusual. This is a pattern that is across all of eastern United States because we just don't have the same disturbance mechanisms that we had historically and how the oak got here. And one of those biggest disturbance patterns is prescribed fire. So I think there's a real opportunity to look at prescribed fire on this property at a large landscape scale. You've got thousands of acres here. So that's presents a real opportunity to sort of stack the deck a little bit in the favor of oak regeneration, because fire can help prepare the seed beds so that acorns have a better chance of germinating. They can control the natural succession of shade tolerant species like maple in places that shade out oak. So creating a more of an open forest environment that's going to benefit that particular species, as well as probably a lot of the plants and animals that are associated with that, not just the oak. I know from walking around pheasant hunting on the property that invasive species is a big issue on the property, particularly the shrub species like honeysuckles. In the lowland river valley, reed canary grass, things like that are also hampering natural regeneration processes. So invasive species almost has to be something that is coupled with all the management that you do on the property in terms of monitoring and control. I'd say huge opportunity is your namesake. It's the Kickapoo River. It's kind of the heart of the whole property. So thinking about that in terms of best management practices for water quality, protecting that resource, developing that resource. And with that, I put unique features because this Kickapoo Valley has lots of little micro environments within it, particularly along the river. So you get these really unique sort of small habitats that are refugia or little pockets of what we would see in northern Wisconsin, for example. You have hemlock stands or tamarack, cedar, that sort of thing. Those are really unique. And so protecting those and emphasizing management in those areas, I think, takes some careful consideration. I put down age class diversity. So when I was looking at that oak age bracket, just trying to diversify the ages of your forest across these 5,000 acres, I think is an opportunity so that you produce, habitat that is conducive to a lot of different species, because each stage of forest development will have different sets of plants and species associated with them. I put down degraded stand management because some of these stands and forests on this property have had a rough history and been treated pretty hard in terms of poor cutting practices, heavy grazing, that sort of thing. So that leads to limited seed sources of some species. It leads to opportunities for invasive species to get in. So trying to get back the structure, function, and composition of these degraded stands, I think is important. I put reforestation. You're one of the largest contiguous blocks of forest in the southwest part of the state along the Wildcat. And there's opportunities to look at maybe old ag land to reforest and to add to kind of the forest block size or the connectivity of that forest, because there's species that key in on that largely forested landscape. I put down the plan could look for opportunities for research and demonstration. So this is a place where you could demonstrate good land management practices that other landowners could utilize and see and then apply those on their property. There's examples of research that's been done on this property before. There's actually a pretty well-known oak regeneration study that Craig Lorimer out of UW-Madison did just north of here. And so integrating some kind of demonstration or research into management, I think might be a nice niche for this particular property. And finally, I would say that there's an opportunity to develop what we call in silviculture desired future conditions. So is that my time limit?
No. Oh, you're way past that.
This is the end. This is the end, I promise. So in silviculture, when we're developing what to do with a forest or a plan, there's two big steps. One is to develop an inventory of what you have, right? And you all have done that. The next is to develop what your landowner goals and objectives are. And those two things feed together to develop where you want to take this property. So envision what those forests you want them to look like to meet those goals and objectives. And that's called what we call the desired future condition. And so developing that then really helps you figure out what treatments things are actually going to do with those individual forests or stands of forests. And so I think that's a really big step. You have the pieces there in place, so you have the opportunity to do it. And I think it will help you get to deciding which of those treatments, like Scott mentioned, is a certain type of timber sale appropriate or is fire appropriate? Well, is that going to get you to that desired future condition? So that's my big long list, Scott. Sorry I went over.
That was a great answer, Greg, but maybe a caveat to our format here. So we're gonna go down the line, and question 2, Armund, we'll start with you, maybe. But if any of the other panelists, you were gonna relate what Greg did, don't feel the need to reiterate. If you say, I agree with Greg, but I've got something else to add, you know. Go ahead.
So I screwed up. I didn't.
Not at all. I just, it was good. It was
Great stuff.
So that was just for your question about essentially.
That was just.
There's a lot of overlap questions too.
Yeah.
There are, I mean, in terms of how to respond.
And I do have my time.
So on number 2?
This is still question 1. I mean, we're gonna stick with question 1, and at the end, if the remainder of the panelists have anything to add or a twist on what Greg's very thorough answer provided us, go ahead, and we'll have time for some discussion about this very general question. So yes, question 1, Armund.
My response to question 1. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not starting me on question 2 then.
No.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to just sort of start out a little bit about my background. Sorry, but I think it relates to the property. I've been in my current position as an ecologist since 2004. A large part of my job since 2004 has been a property manager. I currently manage 13 properties in 7 counties. So I'm very familiar with on-the-ground management action. Also during that time period, a lot of my background has been developing management plans for state properties scattered in western Wisconsin. So I've been part of master planning teams. These are integrated teams of ecologists, foresters, wildlife biologists, fisheries people, that sort of thing. So I've worked on plans from 3,000 acre sites to 80,000 acre sites. Lower Chippewa River, Cooley Experimental State Forest, Black River State Forest, the 80,000 acre Sandhill Meadow Valley, Wood County Wildlife Area Complex. Now we're moving into the Western Coulees and Ridges master planning efforts. So this is something I've been involved with a lot over the years. Switching to my experience on the property here actually goes back to the late 80s, maybe 1987, 88. I shot grouse, bobwhite quail, pheasants on this property. In the late 90s, maybe 2000, I co-authored the management plan for the state natural area on the property. So I've got a long history on the property. So I totally agree with everything Greg said, so I won't need to repeat that. So I'm coming at this at more of a landscape scale management planning standpoint, and really in my mind, so Greg mentioned this is one of the largest contiguous blocks of forest in southwest Wisconsin. So